Being innovative in Pokemon is difficult. Well, I should rephrase that. Being innovative in Pokemon is not that difficult, but being innovative to a successful end, that is a little harder to pull off. So one of the best feelings in the game is when you come up with something new or unusual, whatever it is, and then you bring it to a game and it actually hits like it's supposed to. It is a great feeling. But it's not that common. Even if you're an innovative player and you're constantly putting yourself in that position because you're bringing one crazy thing or another. I mean, you can get into a good groove for sure. There definitely have been players who have gone on streaks with one crazy new thing popping off after another. But it is difficult to pull off time and time again. And more often what you'll see is even when such players try something like that, then you are as likely to see the cool stuff pop up, but not quite as likely to hit like they would have wanted it to. You'll see it's like, oh, that's a cool idea, but it didn't quite work out. Maybe the idea wasn't that good to begin with. Maybe it was just the wrong game for it to be used in. Maybe it'll show up later, but now it's not as surprising. But when it shows up and the surprise hits and it's just like you wanted it to, it's a thing of beauty. Just getting that once to happen in a game is worth remembering. All those games where it doesn't work out necessarily, it's so worth it for that sweet, sweet feeling when what you were, fearing winds up actually working. What is especially rare is when you have a team full of multiple innovative ideas and they all work, or not all of them, but multiple innovations wind up working out. And if you're wondering where the word tech in the title comes from, it's this phrase. I remember I was making fun of it with some friends back in 2014 when it started being used, because these newfangled XY Oris players were using the word tech as their slang. There was a cool moveset, it was a tech. And look at me using it 10 years later. Anyway, so when you've got this innovative tech working, not once, but or the tech not working, the tech can work multiple times. What I'm referring to is when you have multiple techs on a team and they're both hitting, or all three of them are hitting. As the number goes up, it obviously gets harder and harder to pull off in the same game. What is really beautiful about this battle in particular is that this is a team I built that I actually referenced in a recent video. We'll get to that in a sec. And it feels like everything just goes right. Every tech hits. These games are so rare, but that is why we remember them so much, so many years later. In fact, I remembered this game, and I mentioned it in my video I did recently, a history of rain in competitive Pokemon. And August, who is one of the players in this battle, he's the guy named Mr. Uniclus. He found the replay and he was like, hey, this is that game you were talking about with that team you were talking about. And I was like, oh, wonderful. And then the inspiration for this video came. So, yeah, even when you have those multiple techs on a team, which is not uncommon at the highest level, in fact, it's quite common, then the likelihood of them hitting exactly like you want, it's still likelier that just one of them hits. And then, you might use one of the others, but they're not going to hit in the exact same way. So, or, maybe you show them, but they don't quite work out. You get what I'm getting at. For any of your innovative techs to hit like you want them to is beautiful. For multiple of them to hit like you want them to, that's just gorgeous. And that brings us to this battle. So this was a rain team I built in 2016 and had a lot of fun with. It had some very cool ideas. I gave it to some people. They used it. Like Blunder used it in Smoke Tour, I remember. August wound up using it. This isn't even 2016. This is 2017, I want to say. Yeah, 2017. This was a later round of a DPP Cup battle. So it wasn't just like messing around on Smog Tours either, because anything can pop off when you can use it without fear of consequence because you're just messing around with your friends. But in a serious tournament game, that's what you live for in the Pokemon sense. So for this to be used in a later round DPP Cup game, for everything to work out the way it did, is just a thing of beauty. So for those who did not watch the History of Rain and competitive Pokemon video, I recommend that. But for those who did, might not remember the team, the quick recap is that I was trying some new stuff with Rain. in that I wanted to lead off with Empoleon, because the idea was to bludgeon the opponent with as much damage as possible before setting up rain. Since when you lead off with Uxie or whatever rain setter, then yeah, you can get up rocks and then send in the Kingdra, and you're going to be threatening a lot, of course, but you haven't really damaged the opponent at all. So Rain Kingdra is a lot scarier when you have when the opponent has less Pokemon. Obviously, they have less to sacrifice. They might not have a key Pokemon that would be used to ward the Kingdra off. The Pokemon that might be used to ward Kingdra off might be too weak to do it, like if Pasho Berry T-Tar's already been weakened. And also, it makes it more unexpected, because when you see an attacking league, you're not thinking Rain Team at all. So, to continue this confusion, I also wanted to use some unusual rain setters. Bronzong is the most traditional rain setter on this team, but it doesn't even have Damp Rock. It has Custap Berry, because another one of the ideas was I love Custap Bronzong in general, but you also, sometimes when it gets low on health, then it's tough to get that Rain Dance off. I mean, the obvious appeal of Bronzong on Rain is Damp Rock, because it's so bulky, and you remove its one weakness, which is fire, all that great stuff, and then you explode and you get the Rain Inducer in, or Rain Abuser in, but it can be a challenge to do that after Bronzong's taken some hits, and, before you're ready to explode, getting the Rain Abuser in isn't the easiest thing in the world. So the idea was to combine Custap Berry with Rain Dance. So you get less rain, but the idea is when Bronzong is at such low health, then you are able to get maximum rain turns in situations where you never would have gotten them otherwise. 24% Bronzong against something faster, you would never get rain there. But with Custap Berry, you get rain, and you get it as Kingdra in with 4 turns if you're getting KO'd on that turn. And even if you don't get KO'd for whatever reason, then you explode on the next turn, you still have 3 turns of Specs Kingdra Rain in a situation where you otherwise wouldn't have gotten it. Well, I guess if you wouldn't have been KO'd, but, I'm starting to go tangential. So the use of Custap Berry is really big there. And then there was, but the other rain setters, I believe there are 3, so 4 rain setters total. An attacking lead Empoleon, a Specs Kingdra, Rocks, Rain, Bronzong, and then you've got, because the Empoleon shouldn't have Rocks, it should just focus on attacking, because that's the whole idea behind the team. And the other rain setters are unusual. Roserade, Toxic Spike's Absorption, and with Weather Ball, you get a very powerful water-type attack. So with Rain, you weaken, and Weather Ball, you completely turn the tables on Heatran. Rain acts as an Aqua Berry. I think I might have even used Aqua Berry on the Roserade to allow it to set up Rain in the face of Scarf Heatran. I think, but I think I might have also used Custap Roserade. I think I probably used both items on different variants of the team, because I am a big believer in multiple variants of a team. But yeah, I remember using Aqua Berry very distinctly in some tournament games. So, yeah, but obviously with Aqua and Rain against slower Heatran, you just completely dominated with a Weather Ball. And Weather Ball is also great generic coverage. I think, what else am I thinking of besides Heatran? No, I'm thinking of how I liked Weather Ball Scarf Roserade, because I was using it on a team with T-Tar, so you get Rock Weather Ball, which is great for things like Dragonite and Zapdos. That no other, it far outdoes HP Ice against Zapdos for sure. It still hits Dragonite very hard, and it's a good neutral attack into Heatran. So that's what I was confusing it with. But Weather Ball, with water in Rain is obviously still very good on Rose. So there's that. And then there's Rotom Wash, and this was inspired by, I think it used to be on the Analysis in the Smog decks, like 10, at this point 14 years ago. I was making a Rain team, and I was like, I want to use this rainy Rotom Wash set, because hey, you get accurate Thunder and you boost your Hydro Pump. I mean, everything looks good here. And besides that, initial appeal of the whole Thunder Hydro Pump combo, you also completely turn the tables on Tyranitar, because not only do you take away its Sand boost, but you power up your Hydro Pump, so you're really slamming it. And to really hammer this home, I believe the item was Colbur Berry. I think there were some other items I might have messed around with, but I'm certain that on some variants of the team at least, then the Rotom was Colbur Berry for that. And what's more, obviously the initial impulse in that last slot on Rotom Wash is to run Shadow Ball or HP Ice, but I was thinking about it, and this one I'm really proud of. This one I was thinking about because Breloom was such a pain at the scene. This was around the time where people genuinely wanted Breloom, looked at. It's like, oh, it's making stall unviable, stuff like that, which was a fair concern at the time, but we adapted. But yeah, Breloom was not just annoying to stall, it was annoying to offense as well, especially offense that's going to have slower Pokemon. Not every Pokemon is going to be able to both outspeed and OHKO Breloom, and it only needs to live or outspeed something to do Breloom things. So I figured with Empoleon and Bronzong both, I needed something that would help significantly against Breloom. And again, at full health, Breloom can take whatever from Rotom Wash, even HP Ice. So I decided HP Flying, and I'm really, really proud of it, because once Blunder brought it to Smogontor, and he HP Flying to Breloom, and I was so happy to see it. And then I forget who he was playing, but the player was like, dude, Blunder just HP Flying by Breloom with Rotom. What is going on? Yeah, so I was really proud of that. And the final rain setter is Starmie, which followed, I think it might have also been Colbur Berry. In fact, I'm fairly certain it was. But, there were other options, like they both could have been custap. I've used custap Starmie before, it's very good. Or it was very good. Nowadays, I don't know, but at the time, roughly a decade ago, a little less. But yeah, custap Starmie was... Not custap Starmie, but Rain Dance Starmie, it's just an offensive Starmie, which is already good from Jump Street. But with Rain Dance, you similarly turn the tides on T-Tar, just like you would with what's it called? With Rotom Wash. Except the Hydro is obviously even stronger because it's Stab. And yeah, for those thinking, wait, isn't Rotom Wash half water? And no, Gen 4, it's all the Rotom Storms are still Electric Ghost. They changed that in Gen 5. Yeah. So yeah, Rain Dance Starmie, simple idea and just generally threatening. And obviously, that's the nice thing about it. Here, the rain setters are also the rain threats, barring Bronzong. But, with even Roserade, it's not a traditional rain threat, but even with Weather Ball, you can really mess up a Heatran, and then Roserade itself becomes scarier if the Heatran can't take it on. But Rotom Wash is a threat on its own, Starmie's a threat on its own, but, I don't think, one of them might have carried Damprock at some point. That's what I mean by variance of the team. But I believe that was what I liked about the team. You make up for your traditional bulkier Damprock rain setters by having 4 of them and having them all threatening as well. And the fact is that Specs-Kinger is just such a monster on its own. But yeah, so now that we've got that out of the way, let's get to the battle itself. Not even 13 minutes in. I'm really cutting down, aren't I? So, in comes Empoleon facing a Flygon lead. So here, you just attack. That's the whole Empoleon thing for you. And Flygon's a good matchup, whether it U-turns, stays in, whatever. Because nothing on an offensive team like switching into Empoleon. So Magellan goes for Earthquake, and Hydro Pump goes to the left. To Empoleon's left, Flygon's right, whatever. If we switch the perspective, then, when you're using the Empoleon, it goes to the left, which is why that is actually a fairly common expression among competitive players. Today you learned, if you didn't know. Machamp Cross Chop in GSC is often referred to as to the left, because it so often goes to the left. But yeah, since we are on the other perspective, as this replay shows, then, you know what, we're going to skip to, we're going to put ourselves in August's shoes. So, yeah, we will see Hydro go to the left and feel our heart break, as that Torrent boosted pump would have absolutely obliterated Flygon. But such is life. So, yeah, now Bronzong comes in on the other EQ. We don't know if it's a Scarf or a Band Flygon lead, both very possible. And now Breloom, Bronzong, the BR squad is both in the field, in Brazil, rain. And I just used the wrong form of in instead of on, because I instinctively thought of how Brazilian players famously mix those up. Just because I remember, some of them were explaining to me, it just doesn't make sense. And I understand, because Czech, which is, one of my languages, Czech people have, similar problems sometimes. So, that little tidbit aside, Bronzong has the rocks now, so that's good. Problem is, Breloom's in now, so Empoleon gets sacked. A Spore to an attack, either way. This is around the time where a sub was much, much, much rarer, so you don't have to worry about it subbing on the switch. That would have been a much riskier play if Breloom was still a sub, but 3 attack Breloom with Mach Punch and Superpower was the norm at this time, because it was just absolutely suffocating the metagame. So it would have been worse if Breloom had stayed in and, or had just gone for the attack and not the Spore, because now Empoleon can be preserved as a sacrifice. But, yeah, so now it goes for the Focus Punch. You don't want to just let anything come in. And I skipped the animation, so we're going to go back for a second. So Empoleon gets slept, and you don't want to just Seed Bomb into something like Dragonite. You know, if something's going to come in, you want to smack it as hard as possible, and because it's only Ghosts that don't take any damage, right? And could it be Gengar? It could be, but Gengar's frail, so you don't really need to Seed Bomb that much. And Rotom Wash is not generally used as a Breloom switch, for good reason, so you don't fear that as much. So you go for the Focus Punch, and we now see Rotom Wash's Ghost typing on full display as it takes 0 from that Focus. So in this situation, Breloom is obviously tempted, hey, you know what, I want to weaken that Rotom, I want to Seed Bomb it, and that helps a lot of things. Let's see what it's going to do. Is it Scarf? Is it Specs? Nothing really that threatening. I mean, the worst it's going to do is like HP Ice or like Specs Shadow Ball, because Specs does not run HP Ice. So, realistically, you know, neither of those are going to KO, and you get a bunch of information and you damage the Rotom. So you definitely stay in here, because you've already, you know, and Breloom will still be useful later because of Mach Punch. It's just such a great Pokemon. So you stay in, and HP Flying drops it. Ah, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So that is the tech hitting. That alone, you know, the fact that my HP Flying Rotom worked in a serious late-round tournament game, that alone, you know, would have made me remember this replay, but we're just getting started. And comes Swampert. What's this going to do? Well, it's going to set up rocks and, you know, be general bulky Swampert. This is before offensive Swampert was really a thing. So just standard tank pert, great Pokemon on offense teams. So Roserade comes in on the rocks. Now what's going to come in? Scizor. Scizor is generally not a great switch to Roserade because they famously run HP Fire. But he was looking to either sacrifice it to sleep or absorb a Leaf Storm. Since Roserade very, very rarely, if, you know, Roserade would never blindly lead off with an HP Fire. I mean, you want to just HP Fire and do nothing to that Heatran switching in, and it's like, at least throw out your stab, you know? So, Scizor was good for Sleep Claws or for weakening the Rose with Leaf Storm. So while it's not a traditional Roserade answer, it winds up being a good interim Roserade switch, and with Leaf Storm, it can now, you know, stay in and absorb the sleep as intended, or, you know, take an HP Fire and do whatever it's going to do. U-turn, BP, Swords Dance, Roost. Yeah, and for all we know, because the Scizor does not have... Oh, it does have leftovers, never mind. For some reason in my memory, it didn't have lefties, but... and I remember thinking it was weird that it didn't have lefties. Like, what is this, you know, non-band, non-scarf Scizor with not... It's not Life Orb, it's not lefties, you know, what is it? Aka? Which, I mean, possible, but, you know, very, very rare. Anyway, so... the Scizor is in and has not been threatened much. And there go Toxic Spikes. I forgot that I ran Toxic Spikes on this, because it's between Toxic Spikes and Leaf Storm. But I remember, I know this is a rain team, and it is going to inherently be a little riskier in the matchup department. But I remember not wanting to completely give up against Stall. And remember, Stall at this time is not necessarily Clefable stuff. It has a lot of Blissey still. So with T-Spikes, in conjunction with the sheer power of Specs Kingdra and Rain, and Specs Kingdra and Rain can potentially, it's a low roll, but it can potentially 2-KO Blissey with Rocks Up. So that just means you double switch on Blissey a few times, and there you go. The problem is nothing really scares the Blissey out, besides Bronzong's Boom, which is super unreliable. So, or like the threat of Rotom Trick before you reveal its moveset, but that's also super unreliable. So, that's why T-Spikes are here, to provide direct pressure on the Blissey. You know, you force it out once with Bronzong's Threat of Boom or Rotom Trick or whatever, and then T-Spikes pressure it to where it struggles to take anything on, especially if you get that second layer. So this is not, obviously, August is not facing a Blissey stall team here, you know, with the Flygon, Scizor, Swampert, Breloom squad. Not to say that Blissey would be the weirdest thing, but it's not going to be a stall team. So... But Toxic Spikes are still going to be useful because of Swampert. They can be useful for T-Tar later on. I mean, the extra chip damage can help Rotom and Starmie. You know, even Kingdra, Pasho Berry T-Tar was really, really popular around this time because of Starmie, Offensive Suicune, and Polion. And Rain Dance, and Rain Dance Kingdra was still more common at the time because it was such a devastating wall breaker / sweeper, but it's good against specs as well. But Passion Retarded was used to stop that. It was used to stop anything with a water move, really. I mean, it helped it against Hydro Rotom Wash, even solidifying that matchup even more. It was even useful against Gyarados. So, it's whatever T-Tar, Pert, it's going to be useful against a lot. So, but even just wearing down the Pert is going to be helpful, because the T-Spikes mean that whereas Bronzong would otherwise be generally in a very silly stalemate against the Pert, now Bronzong dominates the Pert, because if it's just going to be standard EQ, Ice Beam, Roar. So, I mean, obviously the threat comes from Pert roaring around, and it'll probably roar to something that can threaten the Pert out, but you are wearing it down more. And wearing it down more brings it into Starmie range more. Brings it into Rotom range more. So just that one layer of T-Spikes, you don't even have to go for the second layer. The more immediate damage on T-Tar is probably going to be more impactful, or definitely going to be more impactful. I should really make a video about 1 versus 2 layers of T-Spikes. But yeah, it's going to be more impactful because you're trying to get up Rain and do as much damage as possible. So you want that immediate 12.5 as opposed to the gradual build-up. And that is going to be the case even in the potential stalemate of Bronzong versus Pert, because it's going to roar you and you're going to get something else in that'll threaten him more. So it's not going to have enough time for that extra damage to rack up. And and even if it does decide to stand and Ice Beam you down for whatever reason, then you're just chipping it more with EQ. So yeah. These kinds of critical thinking things will help you in the real world if you're wondering why I'm going on so much about all these details. So, anyway, plus they're just, good for brain exercise. So, we're going with the one layer T-Spikes, but now the Roserade, even if it had HP Fire, wouldn't be threatening here. So now we're going to get out of there, and in comes Rotom Wash. The Scizor reveals SD. Bulky SD was king at this time, one of the best sweepers still. Sweepers and defensive Pokemon. That's why it was so good. It was a great defensive Pokemon that was also a great sweeper. Missed the glory days of Bulky SD Scizor. It's why I made a video on why Scizor fell off in DPP, or what happened, whatever the video is called. Anyway, if you scroll a little, you'll find it. So the Scizor, as great as it is, does not want to stay in and get tricked unnecessarily by the Rotom or Will-O-Wisp, because even Scarf Rotom can... I mean, with the HP flying, it's probably not going to be a Scarf Rotom, but, you don't know what's going on with this thing. There's no reason to say, oh, that thing doesn't have Will-O-Wisp because it has HP flying. HP flying is complete uncharted territory. So the Rotom is in, it's probably going to scare the Scizor out. And even if it doesn't scare the Scizor out, the move is to Rain Dance. But it does scare the Scizor out. In comes Swampert. With the poison, actually it would have avoided the burn and made its EQ less threatening, but no worries. Especially because you're not trying to burn it, you are trying to Rain. And now with Rain, then Hydro Pump is stronger than... well, it doesn't have Shadow Ball, but it winds up being a stronger... It effectively gets stabbed, so it's stronger than Shadow Ball would have been. And it decks Pert for a nice 50%. As Pert does indeed roar out, since it is unable to threaten anything besides Ice Beam on Rotom Wash, which you don't want to do that. You want to just, roar gets all sorts of good stuff. You roar in Bronzong, and I mean, you figure out more about the Rotom set. I mean, once you see Rain Dance, you kind of figure out, yeah, this thing is going to have Hydro Pump, but it's... you also want to, maybe you roar in the Empoleon, KO it with Stealth Rock. That's one less sacrifice for later. Breloom's not around, so you can't spore anything else, but hey, you still have one less sacrifice for later. You roar in Bronzong, and you see, lefties, no lefties, okay, you get some more roars off. You roar in, one of the 2 unrevealed Pokemon, you get more information. That's very important. I mean, once you see the Rain Dance, one of them is going to be Kingdra, but you may be getting that last Pokemon, because this is such an unusual set of Pokemon that you're thinking, I see Rain, but, besides the Kingdra, what could that last be? I mean, another Swift Swimmer? Let's find out. Of course, Roserade is not what you wanted to drag in. Roserade or Kingdra. So you wanted, 3 other Pokemon, but, and these 2 were the ones that were threatening. But yeah, Roserade comes in, and now we are going to see another tech hit. Because remember how we mentioned Weather Ball and how it's water? Well, Water Weather Ball will KO Swampert at this point. No need to go -2 with Leaf Storm. No need to risk the accuracy with Leaf Storm for that matter. And you know how Scizor was switched in before? It's like, oh, it only fears HP Fire. Wait, this is a Rain team, so it's not even going to have HP Fire, to say nothing of not fearing it. So you just go to Scizor, right? And August launches the Weather Ball, and look at it. Crushes it. That's massive damage. So Scizor beautifully 2 KO'd, and Scizor is going to be way more useful even at low health, potentially, if you get that Roost off on Bronzong. So Swampert winds up getting sacrificed, but the damage is done. Scizor has been smacked. It's going to be at 30 when it next comes in. So down Pert goes, and Rain's still active for a turn, but here comes Flygon. So, beautiful seeing Weather Ball work like that. And it reminded of Pokemon Cypher 2013, where, was it Jaywitz who said you don't have the Weather Balls? Well, I sure proved him wrong. Anyway, August is going to sacrifice Rosie here. Perhaps, unfortunately, perhaps Flygon was the better sacrifice, but I think he wanted to catch a U-turn. Perhaps, maybe, overdoing it a little. But, yeah, because Empoleon would have, but I guess he said, with Pert down, Roserade's going to be less useful against the offensive threats in the back. I mean, Empoleon is even less useful, but maybe you wanted to preserve that, U-turn block for later. So I can see it. Preserving the block on U-turn might be big for momentum later on if Roserade isn't going to be valuable. So I like that. Oh, you know what else I like? Well, oh, no, I see it. By outraging, then now August goes to Bronzong and gets up Rain again. And if Empoleon is sacrificed, then yeah, I see that. So by sacrificing Roserade, now Magellan has to outrage the Bronzong, and Bronzong gets up Rain without letting Scizor roost on the Zong. Now, I'm not saying that Scizor is the most threatening thing, but it can be annoying. You don't want to risk Starmie to a Bug Bite. Kingdra switches into it fine, especially on the Roost, but, I understand it. I'm not saying it's the objectively correct move, but there is definitely logic to it. Valid logic at that. It's like, oh, there's logic to it. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that logic was good, but this was, valid, good logic. Whether it was optimal, I'll leave to someone else. But, yeah, so this was done to prevent Scizor from roosting and get the Rain back up. And, yeah, so what happened? Oh, my ad block updated. Okay, well, leave me alone, please. Okay, so, the Outrage actually crits. So you're thinking, oh, well, Scarf Flygon Outrage bounces off Bronzong, right? Even a crit. Oh my god, why did that crit do 64? And at this point, Bronzong, the Flygon reveals itself to be banded. So this kind of throws a wrench in the plan because, crit Scarf, fine. Banned non-crit, fine. But both, that's rough. And that Hydro Miss on the first turn, I mean, this Flygon should have been KO'd on the first turn, and now it's here critting. That's the worst feeling, isn't it? When a Pokemon that should have been KO'd crits you. I mean, like, what kind of cosmic... Anyway. Yeah, so August made a great move by Gyro Balling. It's not even necessarily about the damage on Flygon. I mean, it is about the damage on Flygon, insofar as it means that now Rotom will KO it with Hydro Pump. I mean, at this point, Rotom's pretty close to, once it takes Stealth Rock damage, Rotom's pretty close to KOing it with HP Flying. You might not even have to risk the accuracy. So the damage is meaningful there. But more meaningful than the damage on Bronzong, considering your end game is, let loose the Kingdra, which is just dropping it no matter what. It's more about getting maximum Rain turns. So you Gyro Ball the Flygon on this turn, you see if it confuses itself or not. And then you can set up the Rain for maximum Rain. Because remember, it's not Damp Rock. You have to be very careful with it. You have to be very precise. So this throws a wrench in the plan for sure. I mean, you still get something out of it. That whole Flygon HP Flying Hydro Pump range. But it does mess you up. Because now, with it being banned at all, Bronzong cannot take another Outrage. However, notice the HP it was dropped to. 30%. Well, 29.7 we now see in the replay. Remember how it was Custap Berry? Well, this is exactly the kind of situation I was talking about, where Bronzong will dip to low health, and then you switch out, you come back into rocks, just like Custap Machamp and all the other great Custap abusers. Custap Metagross, revolutionizing the metagame a few years before this, where they would regularly drop to low health, and even if they did not necessarily drop to Custap range from a certain attack, you could switch them out and then switch them back into Stealth Rock, and then they would activate until you drop to that 25 or lower range, and then activate your Custap Berry, and then you would be able to do Custap things. So with Bronzong is the exact same thing. I remember a tournament game I had once where I switched Machamp into Stealth Rock. I sacrificed like 3 other Pokemon or something, and I switched Machamp into Stealth Rock over and over and over again to get it from like 30-something down to Custap range. And that won the game. So that's the kind of power it has. So yeah, Bronzong is now obviously going to have to switch out and sacrifice the Empoleon, but not all is lost, because first now we know that the Flygon is banded, i.e. outsped by Starmie, and the Bronzong is in Custap range for later. So here comes Starmie. It is going to Ice Beam right away, no sense messing around. And in comes Scizor, going to be sacrificed, so the last Pokemon aren't really going to want to switch in. The Flygon being banded also means the last is going to be a Scarfer. And we already figured at this point, look, this is a very offensive team. This is rain food, so it's not going to be well equipped to take on Kingdra. But now knowing, the Flygon's not Scarfed, that means something else is going to be Scarfed. That means one of those last 2 Pokemon is absolutely decked by Kingdra. Because no Scarfer can take on Kingdra. So that makes the endgame even more locked down if you can pull it off. So, Hydro Pump willing, and it is. Scizor goes down. And in comes Rotom Wash. There's the Scarfer. So, I see what it's going to lock itself into. Doesn't even matter at this point because your play is the same. It's going to Shadow Ball so you don't let the Rotom in. Good move. And, is Kingdra going to come in and launch a hit, and then you sacrifice something, you revenge kill it, and then maybe you're okay? No, here it comes. You're putting it all on the line here, because Bronzong is going to come in and Custap, Rain Dance, and now you go for broke with Kingdra. So, yeah, launch that Surf. Down goes Rotom. And Magellan drops the GG in the chat. So that's, even before the Kingdra launches a single move. Isn't that beautiful? Look, it could be a bluff, but what's there to bluff? No matter what, August is clicking Surf until he can't anymore. So he said GG, and that seems like an admission because Flygon's going to come in and obviously it gets dropped. So what's the last? Infernape. And Infernape is, of course, going to outspeed and Scarf and crit CC. No, it doesn't even outspeed. And it drops. So, yeah. That is basically it from me. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. This was a blast to revisit. It's just such a great feeling of revisiting the innovations that make this game so thrilling sometimes. And so rewarding. To put the work in to try and figure something out and just, see it pan out just the way you had designed it to. There's really something beautiful to that. So, once again, thank you, and I will see you in the next one.